The games industry has been through a really turbulent few years. From post-COVID corrections to rising costs and market oversaturation, many studios have faced layoffs, closures, and really unpredictable business conditions. Now, I've been at a number of different industry events recently, and conversations seem to always gravitate towards these challenges. Pretty much everybody in the room is asking, when will things get better? So I wanted to share some insights from the discussions I've had with fellow studio founders, from industry veterans, and share some practical advice for anybody else navigating this roller coaster, which kind of feels like all of us right now. Let's get on with it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Goth Boss podcast. It has been a while since I did a solo episode, so I wanted to give you a little update on some conversations I've been having with industry friends. I quite often go to events or I'm chatting to people online, and there's always these little conversations that happen behind closed doors. We're all getting little bits of insight from each other. So I really want to talk about that today. The games industry has been a mess. It's been a heck of a roller coaster for the last few years, and I don't think any of us are finding it easy. Many of us are contemplating leaving the industry. Do we keep our studios open? What do we do? So what I want to do today is just dive into, honestly, the insights I've got from friends, because there's been various articles about this over the years, especially since COVID. It seems like it got bad and it slowly feels like it's getting better. But we're all still having these conversations. So I'm going to give you sort of the summary of those chats I've had with my friends. And if you have a different insight or a different take, please do put it in the comments, because I feel like sometimes we just see the press version of things. We don't often hear the real stories behind the studios. And that's what I'm hoping to bring you today. So why does this matter now? Why are we talking about this? Well, frankly, stuff got bad and it feels like it's slowly starting to get better, but it's still pretty bad, to be honest. There are many people that have been affected by this. Since 2022, almost 40,000 people have lost their jobs globally in the games industry. And that's just one number I saw. Now, not all of those will have been reported. Not every small indie or solo developer will be included in those statistics. So while we hear almost 40,000, honestly, it's probably more than that, because there'll be a lot of people who slip through the gap. And then, as well as people losing their jobs, there are studio closures. So in the UK alone, in just the 1 year from April 23 to May 24, 248 game studios closed or exited the industry. That's according to a Tiger report. But that number is ridiculous. In 1 year, we lost 248 studios. And then since then, we've just been seeing studio numbers keep decreasing because people are struggling to keep the doors open. They are struggling to keep funded and to keep people hired. And of course, these layoffs don't just affect the industry and the numbers and the figure, but they affect people. Layoffs and closures carry real psychological weight for people. If you've been laid off, it can really impact your confidence and your identity and whether you want to stay in this industry that many of us love. But if you're not yet impacted by it, there's often the fear and there's the worry and there's the uncertainty around, well, am I next? And then if you're let go, many people feel that personal responsibility, feeling like, oh, is it their fault? What could they have done? Even though most of this is driven by industry struggles in a broader sense. So what's actually happening in the industry? How do we survive this? While I was researching this episode, I found a few helpful articles, references and statistics, some of those I've mentioned. And what I'll do is I'll put the links to those in the show notes in case you want to read them and go deeper. If I have missed anything particularly interesting, or if you know of better stats, please do put them in the comments, because it's really, really hard to stay up to date with this, because it's not a past thing, it's an ongoing thing, and it's really tricky to keep up. So we all know games is a roller coaster. It's an absolute mess at the minute. And the conversations I'm having are that it feels like it's at a tipping point where it might be starting to get a little bit better, but it's hard to know, right? Because it's still tricky times, especially financially. So let's talk about why this happened at all and why it continues to be happening. The big one is that post-COVID, we had a correction. When the lockdowns happened across all different countries, everybody was stuck indoors. They were playing video games and there wasn't really much else we could do. There was an absolute boom in multiplayer games or online games, even browser games with friends and family. it was an absolute boom time for the consumption of games. And people weren't spending their money going out for meals and doing other things. And so we had more money to spend on games. And so that was a real sort of peak for us. And many studios grew very quickly to sort of factor that in. We didn't know if we were going outdoors ever again. So we built more games and we hired more people and we grew our studios. And it was kind of an exciting time for games, even if not for every other reason that was, happening. The world wasn't great. But the games industry felt like it had this real boom. And then post-COVID, everybody started going back outside. And we started spending a little bit less time playing games. And also we have the whole financial situation going on where the cost of living is insanely high. And so many people are cutting out any of those frivolous spends. They're cutting out things like your monthly subscriptions. If you don't need them, we're not doing them. We're watching what we spend on groceries. And games are naturally getting hit by that too. And so we're finding that as much as people are still spending money on games, it's not ramping up. That curve is not continuously going up with the amount of spend. It's kind of stagnating, at least from the stats that I have seen. And so when you've got stagnating earnings, and then many people having made games and sort of boosted their studios, naturally there's going to have to be an overcorrection or a correction. And it does feel a bit like an overcorrection lately because there have been so many people that have been let go. And it isn't all just COVID. It isn't just that fixing everything after the pandemic. For a lot of games, there's rising production costs because, again, cost of living has gone up. And while not every studio is factoring that in and paying people what they are worth, games do cost a lot in terms of budgets, and the timelines are very long. And then investors are demanding quicker returns. They're wanting more guaranteed returns. And also a lot of the investment money is not going into the normal production of video games. A lot of money now in terms of video game money is going into either gaming technology or into AI tooling. And that's a whole separate podcast episode. I will do one on AI at some point, so feel free to send me your questions if you want to talk AI. But there are many people investing in technologies broadly and in AI, which means that investment isn't getting put into the normal studios that just want to make a really fun video game. Another thing that's impacting just the state of the industry right now is market oversaturation. And I use that phrase cautiously because, there's lots of different games, there's lots of different audiences. But every year, more and more games are getting released. And that's great, but it does make it very hard for your games to get found. And it also means you're competing with more people for a money pie that's not getting any bigger. So we're all struggling. And then the obvious big names, the known IPs, the AAA, they are going to be earning the vast majority of that, the lion's share. Unless you get outliers like Balatro, which obviously did very well. But indie outliers aside, the vast majority of money is going to those known IPs, to the big known entities. And so with more and more games getting released and more of the pie going to the bigger companies, your smaller studios of that are really going to struggle because people aren't spending as much. And then one of the final points just to mention in terms of just studio health and funding is that many studios in recent years got acquired. They got swallowed up. They got pulled into these bigger groups. And then there has been much pressure to improve the bottom line, to improve profit, which means, unfortunately, many people are getting made redundant. And often it's not because they're bad at their job or anything. Often it's just culling the numbers on a spreadsheet and seeing people just as a row in a database. It's not nice. It's not a good way to go about it, because as an industry, we are going to be losing those incredible people. So there are many things contributing to the state of the industry right now. It is a mess, but the general consensus is that it's going to stay a mess for a while, but it's going to slowly get better. That's at least what I'm hearing from my friends in the industry. And so what's likely going to come next? What's the next step in this process? We're likely going to see more consolidation. We're likely going to see larger studios acquiring smaller one, helps mitigate risk. Although unfortunately that does remove some of their autonomy and their ability to make exciting choices and make new games and take risks. But those larger studios and publishers are going to keep acquiring the smaller ones. And then just today I saw on the news, is it 55 billion is what EA has been acquired for by funding companies. And I think we're going to see more of that, like more big investors taking over the bigger companies. Maybe they're going to start selling off parts of it. Maybe they're going to try and get them to use AI, whatever it is. We don't know the reasons behind it, but I think that's something that's going to continue because game studios need money. And unfortunately, when someone comes to you with a big paycheck, sometimes companies feel like they have to take it in order to keep the lights on, to keep people hired. There's been a lot of conversation with my friends about the way we make games as well in terms of the company structures and teams. So it used to be that, you'd have these companies and you'd have 50, 100, 1,000, 10,000 employees making something. And you would primarily only have those employees. However, many of us feel like we're going to see more of a shift towards the sort of film and TV production model where you have this squad of really good people that work in code, in art, in audio, in production, in design, and so on. And you get together for a project and you work on it, and then you go your separate ways because there's less overhead and risk for a studio if you bring in freelancers versus having employees. So that's something that we've been discussing quite a bit when I speak to my friends. Many people are looking at bringing in more freelancers rather than full-time employees, and many of those freelancers are fractional. And if you've not encountered that word before, don't worry, I'd only just recently encountered it in the startup scene. Fractional effectively means part-time. It's you're there for a fraction of the time. So you're not working a 5-day week for these people or 4 days if it's a 4-day work week. You might work 1 or 2 days a week, 1 or 2 days a month. And then you have multiple clients on the go at the same time. So that's a new model that we're seeing, more of this fractional way of working. And I think we're going to continue to see more and more of that. And I'm seeing that in my own work where people need you to come in and help for a small amount of time, but maybe not full time. Another thing that feels like it's already here, but I think it's likely going to continue, unfortunately, is the shift in stability. It used to be that a full-time job at a AAA studio would feel much more secure than being an indie dev or in being a freelancer. But those sort of security levels feel like they have shifted massively where no one feels more secure than the other at the moment. And that's very, very different. It always used to be very risky to be a freelancer and you've always got to find new clients, but it doesn't feel particularly stable or secure in full-time employment land either. And again, that's from conversations with many people in the industry from all sorts of different studio sizes. And then the final thing that we seem to be all kind of agreeing on is that, the market is going to rebound. The market is going to rebound. It feels like we've been on this roller coaster. There's been this hard correction for sort of the inflation of studios during COVID. And it's been really tough for the last few years, but people feel like it's going to start getting better over the next 2 to 3 years. The short-term outlook, the next 6 months, year, maybe year and a half, it's still going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. But it feels like it might be getting a little bit easier and we might be slowly on the way to recovery. Again, I would love to hear your insights on this because my pool of research is mostly my friends in the game industry, a lot of people here in Scotland because I've been to a lot of events here, but also speaking to friends that run their own Indian small studios across the UK. I've not directly spoken to many people in America or in other countries. So if you have insights from where you live that might be different to my take, please do pop them in the comments because it would be absolutely fascinating to hear if it's any different elsewhere or if someone else is already seeing an improvement. So I mentioned earlier that one of the things I think that isn't helping is the sort of AI arms race that's happening. I understand why it's happening, because when you have investors want a return. They want any return from a startup that they invest in or a studio to be better than the return they would get on the stock market or for property. So they're looking for a huge return, knowing that a lot of their investments will likely fail. And at the moment, the way that people are seeing those big returns is from AI. And many people in games are not a fan of AI. It feels like the genie's out of the bottle. AI isn't going to be going anywhere, but I do think it will mature over time. But unfortunately, while all that is happening, pretty much all the money is going into AI and tech startups in that sense, not in the traditional gaming studios. And so there's a big piece of the puzzle that's missing for us there. I don't know if that will come back. But that does seem to be where the lion's share of investment is going right now. So again, I'd love to hear your take on this, like, especially in terms of AI. Like, have you seen people willing to offer you funding if you're using AI, or if you're just seeing like less investment because you're not using it? Because that's the general vibe that I get from my friends. If you're using AI, you'll likely get funding. If you're not using it, you're going to struggle. That seems to be common across the board. But I would much rather see your true stories and your personal experiences in the comments than just what we read on headlines, because headlines are often skewed, and I would love to hear your personal takes. So when I'm discussing this with friends, many of us talk about whether you are a freelancer, a solopreneur, or you're running a studio of 5, 10, 20, 50 people. How do we survive this, right? Like, thankfully, a lot of them, despite some studio closures, a lot of them have still survived. So well done to those who have survived, because it's been brutal. But what are some tips? Some of this will be obvious, but I'm hoping that this will help more of the like new people. So if you're just going freelance or you're just started a studio, some of these tips I hope will help. So the first one is maintain your runway. Always aim for at least 6 months of operating capital. So that's everything to cover the running costs of your company, your salary for all your staff, and so on. It's also worthwhile doing this in your personal life if you can somehow afford it. It's not easy, I know. But if you can somehow do that, it means that if something bad does happen, you've got a little parachute there. But yeah, for your business, you want to always be making sure you've got at least 6 months of operating capital. If you need to go for funding, you're going to have to leave even longer, because sometimes it can take that long just to get the money coming in. And you don't want to be hitting like an empty bank account and hoping money will land. You really don't want to be at that point. So always have at least 6 months. And if you're remotely worried that you might not get the funding, start sooner. Start 9 months or 12 months in advance. Another bit of advice is that visibility matters. It's very easy to, when times are tough, just hunker down and focus on building your game, which, yes, we do need to do. But remember that being known keeps your projects and your team on the radar, not just of gamers, which is what we often think about. We think, oh, how do we get wish lists? It keeps you on the radar of investors, of the press, of potential partners, of publishers. This also goes for my friends who sort of are looking for new jobs or have got jobs. Many people I know have landed new jobs, but again, everything is so unstable at the moment. Try and remember to take that time to keep your personal profile up to date. Make sure you are getting out there networking, keeping those relationships strong, making sure you remain visible, because staying visible builds trust in who you are. And so let's talk a little bit about what to do if you are made redundant or if you have to close your studio. It's really brutal. I've had many friends that have gone through it. And unfortunately, one of the only things you can do is kind of normalize it. Like, it's not you. And it sounds like a really bad breakup line. It's not you, it's me. But you've got to normalize it, because it's not you. It's not a personal failure. These layoffs are just often numbers in a spreadsheet. It has no reflection on you or your skills 99% of the time. And so please do not take it personally. If you are struggling to find work in games, again, the advice, not just from me, but from my friends, is to consider temporary work outside of games. And it doesn't have to be boring and corporate. I'm not saying you have to go work in a bank, because I've been there. It's not great. But maybe you can work in the creative industries or games adjacent. Maybe it's just broader tech. Maybe it's film and TV. Maybe it's making mobile apps that, again, might not be games, but they at least keep your skills alive. Health tech uses a lot of gaming technology. See if you can find some stability elsewhere while you plan your next step. It doesn't have to be your forever thing. You can come back later. But quite often, those industries are a bit more stable than games are right now. And one other thing I'd recommend you do is use the opportunity to reassess your career goals, maybe your passions, maybe look at what it is you want to do. I had an earlier episode about finding your purpose and using Ikigai. And that's what I did at the start of this year. I left my role in a startup and thought, I had no idea what I want to do next. And I knew I wanted to do games, but I wasn't sure how to do it or what exactly I wanted to do. So take that time, use the opportunity, maybe try some new skills, take some time for you if you can afford to do it, because getting that little bit of time for yourself doesn't happen that often. And so if you're still in it, if you're still struggling along like many of us are, how do you protect yourself going forward? I've already mentioned like networking, staying visible, but please do network relentlessly. Yes, use Blue Sky. Yes, use LinkedIn. Use whatever social media you like, but do that. Go to industry events. Go to the conferences if you can. If you can't afford to go to those, just go to local ones. Your connections are often more valuable than your current technical skill set. It's often all about who you know, because people will trust you and they will want to work with you. So make sure you're networking. Even if you feel like you're secure in your job, protect yourself by staying out there, staying visible. Share your work online, post about your learnings, maybe keep your portfolio up to date and post those updates to LinkedIn. Like, don't wait until you need them and then have to worry about, oh no, I've now got to update my portfolio. Just take a little bit of time and update it semi-regularly. Another thing you can do, especially if you're freelance, is to diversify your income streams. Maybe you do for side projects. Maybe you sell asset packs. Maybe you work on your own games and your own personal IP. Maybe you have a range of different clients. Try and hedge your bets a little bit, because it's very hard to know, unfortunately, whether a particular studio will be around in 3 months, 6 months, or even if a project will be completed. Quite often we're seeing projects are getting cancelled more so than they often are in games, or studios just not getting the funding they need. So try and diversify and protect your income options. Same goes for, if you're running your own studio, like maybe you do grants, maybe you do some co-dev work, a little bit of work for hire. Just try and diversify to keep the lights on. And remember, protect yourself by rethinking the stability a little bit. Full-time roles aren't always this super safe bet. They used to feel like that. It used to be that you got a job and you were maybe set for life and you'd have that job for forever till you retired. These days, that doesn't really happen. And it feels less and less likely that that will be the case for many people. So definitely think about what you would do if the worst happened and you weren't able to keep your job, which sucks, I know, but many of us have to think about it right now. It's really tricky. So let's just wrap up with some sort of, I don't know, a little bit of a pep talk, because it's not an easy topic and it's a bit emo. You're not alone in this, whether you are a studio founder or head that's having to make people redundant, and it's heartbreaking. If you're someone who has been made redundant, if you've been the victim of layoffs and studio closures, none of these are personal failures. They are not. Yes, there can be some industry leadership management failures from overhiring and not planning properly and not planning roadmaps. This happens across the board in any industry. But you as a person, if you are laid off, if you're made redundant, if your studio struggles to get funding, that's not a personal failure on you. It's unfortunately just a reflection of where the industry is. However, as I said before, many of us feel like the industry is going to get better. It will just take time. It will be quite slow. So stay proactive. Do your networking, share your work, share your portfolios, keep building your skills, and just stay out there. And yeah, this is a tough correction, but we'll continue making games. Games are going nowhere. We're just going to struggle for a bit. But your experience, your creativity, your skills are all super, super valuable. So please don't forget that. So I would love to hear, what's your prediction for the games industry next 2 or 3 years? Do you feel like, just like me and my friends do, that things are going to slowly get better and that we might have seen the worst of it and we're on the way back up? I would love to hear what you think, because it's interesting gathering all these different insights and experiences. I personally think, touch wood, we are past the worst of it and that things will continue to get better. I just think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be a bit of a slog. But I hope we all stick around. I hope we all continue to make games. If you love games, please don't bail out. If you can find a way to get through it, even if it's just work in a different industry for 6 months, then come back, please do that, because we are losing so many good people in games. And I really hope some of them come back, and I hope we don't lose any more. But I hope that was interesting. I hope that little insight into some conversations that I've had with my industry friends, is helpful in some way. But please do put your thoughts and your comments in the chat. And I will see you next time. Bye.